Hi. Today we're going to take a look at a very remarkable episode. We're all familiar with Yisro's rejoining his son-in-law Moshe and Klal Yisrael. Could be, according to some opinions, it was before Matan Torah, some opinions it was after Matan Torah. Rabbi Hirsch prefers to think of it as happening before Matan Torah for reasons that he goes into at some length. We'll just work with that assumption for now. So Yisro rejoined Moshe and to some degree more or less joined Klal Yisrael, but seems to have very quickly sized up the situation, figured out what it was that Klal Yisrael needed that they weren't yet getting from Moshe. It's a very strange thing. Moshe, this great teacher, somehow missed what really seems to be kind of obvious. He was overextending himself. He was trying to make himself available to every single Jew to address every single question they had, and with a nation that size, it was simply impossible. He was wearing himself out, and people weren't getting what they needed. So Yisro said, divide your tasks. Take certain tasks that are critical and take those yourself, and other tasks you should delegate to other people. Seems like a rather obvious management solution. Why did Moshe not see it? In fact, if you look at Pasuk Chav Daled, it says, V'yishma Moshe l'kol chosnei. Moshe listened to the voice of his father-in-law, v'yas kol asher amar, and he did exactly what he said. Rabbi Hirsch observes that this in fact made Moshe a much more suitable person through whom the Torah should be given. Because if this fellow is so, and this is kind of the expression that Hirsch uses, so inadequate at management, at managing a large group of people and the transmission of information from this side to that side and the simple administration of a justice system, Moshe seems to have had no clue how to set things up. If he was so bad, so inadequate at that task, how could we have ever imagined that he would make up this brilliant corpus of law that we know as the Torah? Moshe had many, many milos. He was a very great man in many ways. But administration wasn't his thing. And administration, if you're going to fake the Torah, if you're going to pretend that Hashem has told you these laws and then create them in fact yourself and administer them and give them to this people, administration is the one thing you have to be best at. And seems to have been the one thing we know of that Moshe was no good at. Okay, that's a side point, a very important side point, but a side point nonetheless. Let's go back to Pasuk Chav, the beginning of Yisro's instructions to Moshe. He seems, as I said, to have sized up not just the political situation, the administration situation, but the essence of what Torah was. And this has the imprimatur of the Torah's acceptance. The Torah quotes Yisro, Moshe puts into effect Yisro's ideas, and he seems to have been absolutely right, bang on correct. So let's see what these ideas are. V'hisharto es hem, es hachukim, ve'es ha'toros. Hisharta, Hirsch says, is in the form of the double accusative. I have no idea actually what a double accusative is, but apparently the double part of it, that is, there are two things that Hisharta is pointing to. One, eshem, them, the Jewish people, and the second is hachukim v'hatoros, these aspects of law. That is, the chukim are the unchanging laws that govern the daily behavior of the Jewish people, or of any nation, if they happen to have their own chukim, and toros are another aspect. We're not going to go into the exact designation right now, but hisharta is obviously related to the word mazhir or nizhar. Mazhir is warning someone of something. Nizhar is someone who warns himself and is careful himself. But it's also obviously related to the word zohar, zahir. Zohar is a bright light. So hisharta, this double accusative, would be shine light on them, that is, on the chukim and the toros. Shine the light, a bright light, on these laws, so that eshem, so that the Jewish people should themselves absorb, understand, and more readily absorb these laws. So Moshe is told that this is your chelik, this is your task, this is what you cannot delegate to anyone else. You have to be the one to properly explain and contextualize and underline where necessary the chukim and the Torahs to make them so real and immediate that the Jewish people will always embrace them. V'hidata lahem, and then we go on. V'hidata lahem, Yisro says, you will let them know. Now here we have a Gemara in Bava Metzia Daf Lamed Beis, I should say. We have a Gemara which parses this sentence, takes apart each phrase and assigns some meaning to it. So v'hidata lahem, ze beis chayehem. Hidata lahem is referring to the house of their lives. Rashi explains, Lilmoid lahem umanais lehisfarnes boy. Teach them, the Jewish people, a trade to make a living from. That's an odd thing. First of all, where do you see in Hidata lahem that this is referring to a trade to learn to live from? And where even do you see beis chayehem? But most of all, why would Moshe Rabbeinu be instructed to teach the Jewish people a trade? Especially since for the next 40 years, the final 40 years of Moshe's life, they won't need a trade. They're being entirely provided for by Hashem directly. So what is this trade that Yisro is telling Moshe, you have to teach these people? Well, let's go on. Es haderech, the way. Now, the Gemara in Bava Metzia says, Es haderech, zu gemilos chasadim. This is acts of kindness. Yelchu, that they should travel. Ze bikur chaylim, this is visiting their sick. Ba, it, the way they should travel in it, this is the way. Zu kivura, this is burying people. Vesamaisa, zehadin, the action is referring to law. Asher yasun, that they will do. Zu lefnim mishurasadin, this is going beyond the letter of the law. What a strange combination of ideas. But according to Rabbi Hirsch, Hidata lahem, this Moshe will teach them is the way you are to provide for yourselves. He's not going to teach them to become computer programmers. He is teaching them that if you do the following, Gemilas Chasadim, Bikur Chaylim, Kivura, Maisa, Din, and Lefnim Mishuras Din, if you do all those, that will be your umanais. That will be your trade. Whatever you do, whatever job you happen to have, whatever your role is in life, whether it's earning a living or not earning, you're being provided for by somebody else, whatever that role is, it should be focused and it will be enhanced by the chesed, the concern you have for other people. Gemilas Chasadim, the Gemara actually understands to be referring to chesed even when it hurts, even when there's some risk associated. Like Bikur Cholim as an example, afilu ben gilai, even someone who is of your own type, your own age or your own class, where there is some risk that the disease will spread from him to you. Nonetheless, you should take that risk. That kavura, burying somebody, even even someone who's older, and normally he wouldn't go around digging holes in the ground. It's not respectable for him. Nonetheless, if there's a body that needs burying, he must do it. The din, of course, you're not allowed to take other people's money. You have to make sure that other people have the money that they are owed, and they have the things and the standing in society that they are owed. But lefnim mishuras adin, while no court would ever tell you to do something that you don't absolutely have to do, you should be driven not only to desire justice, but to do whatever is in your grasp, whatever you could do to enhance other people's existence, to ease other people's pain. That is lefnim mishuras adin. If you behave this way in the context of earning a living, that's the way Hashem apparently will, that's the mechanism through which Hashem might send an adequate parnasa. That, at any rate, is Yisro's instruction to Moshe. This is your task. You can't delegate this to anybody else. This sensitivity to the spirit of Torah and to the idealism that the Torah demands is something only you can impart. That's your job. Now, what's the job you can delegate? Well, that's Pasuk Chaf Aleph. Va'ata techazeh mikol ha'am. Now you should see from all the nation, Anshe Chayil, Yirei Elokim, men of power. Chayil, like Chil, is a wall that restrains something else. And a Chayil, of course, is a soldier or a whole army. Yirei Elokim, who fear God. Anshe Emes, men of truth. Soinei Botza, people who hate profit that comes at other people's expense. Nothing wrong with earning a living, but not if it comes at someone else's expense. V'samta alehem sari alafim. Now, place on these, you should place these people you found as sari alafim, as officers of the 1,000, sari meos, sari chamishim, sari asaros, officers of the 50s, officers of the 100s, and officers of the 10s. Not necessarily in that order. There are two ways you could understand this, says Rav Hirsch. You could think that you choose almost at random. This guy's going to be one of the officers of the 1,000, this of the officer of the 100, and this of the 10, of the 50. Or, as it must be, as the truth must be, and as we probably, I think, all would understand intuitively, there are 1,000 people from a group of 1,000 people. One who's their greatest will be chosen. From every group of 100, one who's their greatest will be chosen. For every group of 50, and for every group of 10. Not only will be chosen, but if you look at the pasuk in Devarim, at the very beginning of Devarim, pasuk Yud Gimel, where Moshe reminisces for Klal Yisrael over these years of their history together in the Midbar, and he says that he had instructed them, Havu lachem, prepare for yourselves, anashim chachamim b'nevonim, men who are wise and understanding, v'yaduim, who are known l'shiftechem, to your tribes, v'asimem b'roshechem, and I will place them at your heads. This is how they were chosen. The Jewish people nominated them. Every group of 1,000 nominated the one they all felt was their best, and Moshe simply confirmed the nomination, and he assigned them, he appointed them to their positions. So it seemed that if you're the one chosen as the best of 1,000, that in fact you probably are much greater than the one chosen as the best of 100 or the best of 50. And that is the court system, the multi-tiered court system that would remain in play for the next 1,500 years or so in Klal Yisrael. There was the Supreme Court, the Sanhedrin Gedolah, and there would be the lower Sanhedrios in Yerushalayim, and there was every Shevet had its Sanhedrin, and there was a Sanhedrin of 23 in every region, and then every city, every neighborhood might have a Sanhedrin of 3. So each one would judge what they could. And let's take a look at the next pasuk, pasuk Chav Beis. V'shaftu es ha'am b'chol eis, and they will judge the people all at every time. V'ayakol hadavar hagadol yaviu eilecha. Any big things they'll bring up to you. Whatever they don't understand, whatever they haven't an answer for, they'll bring up to the next court higher. Maybe they will, after all. They're better. They're stronger. They're wiser. So maybe that court will. And if that doesn't, the court above, and eventually they'll reach the Sanhedrin Gedolah, or in Moshe Rabbeinu's time, they'll reach Moshe. V'chol hadavar hakoton, and anything small, yishpetu heim, they will judge themselves. V'hakim alecha v'nasu itach, and that will make it easier for you. V'nasu itach, and you'll be able to lift it. They'll carry the load with you. Pasuk Chav Gimel. Im es hadavar hazeh ta'aseh, if you do this thing, but tzivcha Elokim, and if Hashem commands you, if Hashem agrees with my ideas and He commands you to do as I say, v'yechalta amoid, you'll be able to stand. V'gam kol ha'am hazeh al makaymai, and all this people on its place. Yavoy b'shalom, will come to peace. Al makaymai, not el makaym, but al makaymai, which is the place where they're supposed to be. The purpose of these judges, in fact, the purpose of the Torah, is so that every individual Jew should find his or her appropriate place in life. Their task, their circles of relationships, all can be defined and perfected through the Torah's ideals. Only, however, through a system of justice and of teaching, because don't forget, these judges weren't just judges, they were also teachers of Torah, as the Rambam, Hirsch reminds us. The Rambam, in his introduction to Mishnah Torah, he describes how these judges were the ones in the Midbar who would repeat the lessons that Moshe had taught all the people, repeat them a very specific number of times until everybody understood every part of the Torah. So these judges weren't just judges, but they were teachers of Torah. If they do that, if they play their roles, and Moshe plays his role, that is teaching what I'll categorize as the idealism of the Torah, then in fact they will all reach al makayme, they'll all reach their places they're supposed to be. And Moshe listened, and he did exactly what he was told. That, I think, is a reasonable explanation of Yisro's role, his incredible role in Jewish history, but also something of an explanation as to why Moshe didn't have this particular facility available.